Now you can experience sports in ways that you could not. Let me watch this game from the eyes of that particular player. Let me watch that game, but I want to change those 4 players to these other players. Let me make Germany 1990 to play Argentina 1994.
Sports and the way we experience them is changing. And AI, 5G, 3D, and all the other buzzy acronyms are why. On this episode of Crafted, we're exploring the ways sports and technology are intersecting. My guest is Behshad Behzadi, the CTO and Chief AI Officer of Sportradar.
There's lots of things which was very hard to imagine, and now it's becoming more reachable.
Sportradar covers close to 1 million events annually across all major sports and provides a wide variety of data and products to leagues, teams, players, fans, tech platforms, betting apps, and more. Behshad joined after 17 years at Google, where he co-founded Google Assistant, Google Lens, and more. He's been building with AI and voice for way longer than most.
GenAI is like a hammer, everything which looks like a nail. It's an art to where to use it and where not.
In Behshad's last role at Google, he advised other companies on how they could get the most out of AI, and he has lots of practical advice.
If a model is 10 times bigger, it's 10 times more expensive. So do we really need these biggest models, or do we want to build a smaller model?
Or maybe you don't use GenAI at all. Behshad says there are still many areas where good old-fashioned code works a lot better, and we'll get into what he looks for when deciding which approach to use. Welcome to Crafted, a show about great products and the people who make them. I'm Dan Blumberg. I'm a product and growth leader, and on Crafted, I'm here to bring you stories of founders, makers, and innovators that reveal how they build game-changing products and how you can too. Crafted is brought to you in partnership with Docker, which helps developers build, share, run, and verify applications anywhere without environment confirmation or management. More than 20 million developers worldwide use Docker's suite of development tools, services, and automations to accelerate the delivery of secure applications. Learn more at docker.com. And Crafted is produced by Modern Product Minds, where my team and I can help you take a new product from 0 to 1 and beyond. We specialize in early-stage product discovery, growth, and experimentation. Learn more and sign up for the Crafted newsletter at modernproductminds.com. What is it about this moment in sports and the rise of different technologies that is so exciting?
So I think I would say it's not just the sports. I think this is the overall, AI revolution that we're going through. Sports, like any other industry, will be different in the next few years, thanks to also, the expansion of, the AI, in particular Gen AI, which is going to be deployed everywhere. When we think about it, sports for many years, many things have been. The way that we have been consuming a football game or a tennis game is very similar still to what was 5 years ago and 10 years ago. So there are changes, but slower. So I think there might be even bigger possibilities for step function change in the near future for sports fans and experiences that they will have.
Yeah, and it's not just AI, right? It's also mixed reality and 5G, and these things sort of all come together.
100%, it's AI plus UI. So, experience matters a lot. Really, you want to build things which is users want to use it the way that they like to interact with. And yes, 5G and all of the possible, network effect and everything which is possible to now collect, bigger amount of data, which was not possible to be done before. That future of experience on one side, then together with future brain on the other side, combine these two and have this, visual plus personalized, hyper-personalized types of experience of the future.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about personalization and how it'll change the fan experience. In the future, will we be watching the same game?
We will be watching the same game, but we will not see the same things. Because if I'm a beginner and you're an expert in some American sports, I might need some more, contextual explanations of what's happening, or if there's a recommendations from time to time coming in the pauses, moments, the advertisement which might be showing, or I might like betting, you might not. Maybe I want to see, the odds, how the odds are changing while the game is happening. So you don't want that. Maybe I want to see that in a French commentator, which is a little bit biased towards France. So, and you might want, something different. So, but again, it's the same game, but very personalized for each of us. In the past, when people talk about personalization, typically it's about making all your users, put them in 5 buckets, and then depending on which bucket the person is
Right,
falling
right, right.
into, then treat them in that
Now
way.
you can
But
have
here,
5 million buckets.
here, exactly. Here we're talking really about that person level buckets, because, for you, the UI will be different, the sentences will be different, the numbers might be different, the language is different, and all of that is not, you going and fill a long form. It's just, learn from all your, interactions and user preferences that you had before and so on. So the more you use it, the better it gets. So I think in the whole notion of multimodality is touching many experiences, but also certainly sports, really having, images and videos and voice and text and numbers all together, interactive multimodal. So now you can experience actually sports in ways that you could not. Let me watch this game from the eyes of that particular player. Let me watch that game, but I want to change those 4 players to these other players. Let me make the Germany 1990 to play with Argentina 1994, because I want those 2 teams to play against each other. So there's lots of things which was very hard to imagine, and now it's becoming more reachable.
How can generative AI be a competitive advantage? And I ask this question because if everyone is building with OpenAI or pick your favorite latest model, like, how do you think about standing out with this new technology?
GenAI, yes, it's becoming more and more available to everyone, and we're seeing many innovations across the board. So we're seeing startups that building very cool, innovative things. But then when you want to make this go into the action and some of the real products, you do need to to plug in those types of brains into, for example, what did just happen in the game right now. So you can have a standalone classifiers and products in different parts of the world. But building, a product which is fully integrated into, here we're talking really about sub-seconds types of data extraction. So something happened right now, and then this information is just now submitted to the media, to the betting operators, and to everyone. So I think that level of presence and integrations that we have with the leagues and the sports events in general, I think it's certainly a competitive advantage of, to help our Gen AI, or AI in general implementations. But generally speaking, you always need to, to fine tune your products. Today, if you go and ask, ChatGPT about the details of a game, or Google details of games, they fail because they have not gone all the way through, the full Gen AI integrations with which is possible to be done with what we can give them. So the core data, the source of truth, is really still coming from, some live data which is happening. So that live data is not in the models, is something that should be kind of plugged into the model. So that's what differentiates us. But again, you're absolutely right. I think Gen AI is democratizing, AI-based innovation. There was a time, 2-3 years ago, you needed to have lots of dollars to spend for training. You needed to have PhDs in computer science, AI particularly. These days, you can just be, a creative developer who plays with these Gen AI models and connect it with a few things and make cool, impactful products.
You don't even need to be a developer, I don't think, in some cases.
That's true.
I'd love to talk a little bit more about your work at Google. In your last role, you advised hundreds of companies on how they could make the most of generative AI. What are some of the patterns that you observed with enterprises that really succeeded with Gen AI, and what are maybe 1 or 2 that are pitfalls to watch out for?
I think certain, patterns of success was that when top down in a company, some parts of leadership is actually overseeing this to some level, in the sense that there's some level of governance. On one hand, you want to, empower employees to be able to, to use Gen AI, to experiment with Gen AI. On the other hand, you don't want necessarily to try, 2,000 different experiences at the same time. Because, what we also saw during the last year and a half of Gen AI is that, things are changing very fast. So a very good solution from a year and a half ago was already not the best solution, a year ago, and was also changed again in 6 months. So really look into the trends, see what is changing, what is coming afterwards. Think about the prompt size. This is the input size to the generative AI models. When the first time ChatGPT came, I think the prompt size was 8K or something like that. And then at some point, when 65K, many developers were super happy that, now we can solve problems which we could not solve before. A year later, at something around that time at Google, when we launched, the 2 million size input, which is, significantly more, and you can basically, put a full book into the prompt and so on, which you can solve many more problems. The point that I want to try to make with that example is that if today we have some ideas which we think that it requires a prompt size of 10 million, we should look at the trends of what happened, build also for what's coming in the future. One aspect which I think went wrong in some cases was when people did not focus on the product, people focused just on the brains, but then they built something which no one is using them, or the fact, the whole hallucination, I guess there is enough discussions about it, so I don't, talk about it.
Yeah.
But obviously, if you're working on an important area which hallucination can cause problems, you should be careful what parts of the problem you're using with GenAI, what not. GenAI is like a hammer. Everything which looks like a nail in that case, but it's it's an art to where to use it and where not. In big part of the cases, you just good old coding or rule-based system is very good, is the best solution.
Yeah.
And you want to just combine them with GenAI in the right way, where and when it makes most sense.
What do you look for to know, like, oh, this is actually not a generative AI use case. This is just traditional, algorithms and more old school machine learning?
I think even in one specific problem, you might solve parts of it with the old school and parts with generative AI. For example, one of the top use cases of generative AI is customer support and customer, basically chatbots or voice bots, which would talk to the customers and solve some of their problems and so on. And imagine that in the beginning of the call, there is certain 3-4 sentences which has to be said for compliance. And there's two options now you have. You can either ask your GenAI chatbot in the prompt to ask those questions, or you can just have that outside of this GenAI brain in some sense. When you have it outside, you're guaranteeing that 100% of the time this is happening. When you have it inside, there's always, you can, break it in different scenarios that this doesn't happen. Or if you want, your GenAI brain to increase satisfaction of the customers, therefore, in some cases, it might want to give some discounts. But you obviously want to have certain rules. You can't have, GenAI to, be too creative. I think in many solutions, I can imagine that there are combinations of different GenAI agents, plus, in the middle of that, there is different parts, which is very deterministic, which would solve the problem.
Running generative AI applications in production, especially for a consumer application, can get very expensive. And so maybe you don't even need to do it in the first place, as we were just talking about. But what are a few ways to reduce that cost if it really is a great use case, if you want to put it into production?
Yeah, the cost of Gen AI and large language models directly is dependent on the sizes of the models. So, and for many types of problems, you don't need necessarily the largest models, because typically speaking, if a model is 10 times bigger, it's 10 times more expensive. So really one aspect to think about for different parts of the solution is, do we really need these biggest models that is very famous and works very well, or do we want to, distill, build a smaller model outside of that potentially and use that for those parts of the solution? So that's one. The other thing is, as we mentioned, for parts of the solution, we might just not even need to have generative AI, but rather have just simple, good old coding. So don't overdo it. So also, build also for the future, but not for today.
One of the big use cases for generative AI is internal. What are some of the things that you're seeing work well, that you're building on the internal front?
Every company will both use AI and build with AI. So let's first talk about use AI. So use AI would be things like, you're someone in the company who needs to make presentations. You can make your presentations faster than before because now you have a co-pilot types of things which helps you make slides faster. Or you were writing some documents, you can write that documents, a bit faster than before. Another category which is proven, I think it's just, helps people lives, and the proof of that is that even for companies which they don't allow to use, ChatGPT, they don't have yet the enterprise version, many of their employees are actually using it. And the reason that they're using it is that this is making their lives easier. Then there's another category of use, which is very, proven, I would say, and that's coding. Gen AI is actually helping, to quickly, get pieces of code, to quickly write tests for the code that you're writing. I do believe that, in a few years from now, I'm not talking about 10 years, but in the next 2 years, maybe, it's strange that to not use any Gen AI or Copilot when you code. To your point, you said in the beginning, you don't need to be a developer these days. Yes, that's true. If you really have to implement, some code, go and ask it to some of these chatbots. And then if you to write it in a particular language, If you don't know how to run that Python code, again, ask the same, chatbots. Okay, now I have this code. What should I do with it?
Yeah.
And you can get instructions of how to write a code and run it, and then get confidence of that you actually can code. That's all about the using part. And then there's everything about building that. And I think when it comes to the building, that's the part which I personally would recommend to not go with 1,000 use cases, but with identifying the more impactful types of use cases that we can think, or get more confidence with the types of environments that we want to build these experiences. It's very easy that every department will come and say that, hey, when I look at the resumes, I want to extract X and Y. When I want to write a sales email, I want this to happen. It's really thousands the use cases, and it's you don't need to think even very much to say what types of things it can do. But my personal recommendation is, and that's what we're trying to do at Sportradar, is that let's identify some of our top ones. For example, I mentioned customer support. Yes, we know it's proven based on the types of interactions that we're seeing. We know this is working, so we're working on that to make more automated customer experiences. And this is customer support. This is not just for our customers, but also for our internals. We have a big operations going on across all the events around the world. So lots of communication is happening between humans, and many of those communications could be automated. And then I think there is a whole enablement, and this is what many companies are also doing, which is ideas should not come from top down necessarily. Many of the best ideas come really about the actual people who want to improve certain things. So part of our effort is also to have this internal GenAI playground in some sense to have a Sportradar people to be able to produce smaller to bigger ideas iterations.
Before he advised others on how to get the most out of AI, Behshad helped build Google Assistant. That's the Hey Google product. The work started as smartphones were just taking off.
Part of the challenge was that on mobile phones, typing was not that easy, smaller keyboards and so on. So this in parallel with core speech recognition, and deep learning on the image side, but also on the speech recognition, made us, to start to think about that. Hey, look, let's actually focus on the voice products for the phone. As soon as we looked into voice search, we observed that people, when they are searching, they actually do different types of queries, longer types of sentences now. So it's becoming more conversational. So actually, the first innovation we had was when I shared in one of my birthday with some of my teammates, hey, what about we try to solve conversational search using the aggregation of data that Google search has, and then trying to understand, for example, when you say, how tall is the Empire State Building? Who built it? We understand that who built it means who built the Empire State Building. And if you say when, and we understand the meaning of that single word is when was the Empire State Building built? So we tried to basically use a data-driven approach to solve that, which was pretty ahead of its time, I would say. So it actually made us, to got super excited. And then slowly, a couple of years after, then we started working on getting a bit more ambitious with that previous success and thinking about, what about we make a human or something as close to the human? And that's where we started with a product which was the predecessor of Google Assistant initially inside Google, and had a different name. And slowly, when we started to interact with it, it started to look actually, okay, this could be the way to interact with devices in general. And later on, this became a more important, product. We renamed it to Google Assistant. And obviously, then we worked on all different types of devices, Google Home and on the Pixel phones and so on. And in the first 1 month, we were just 4 people. And a month later, we were 20. And a year later, we were maybe 1,000 people. So that's
what were some of the hardest problems or hardest moments that came up as you were, scaling, like you just said?
One part of challenges in the assistant era, and I think it's the same a little bit now in the GenAI era also, was that, all the top tech companies were just looking at each other, what everyone else is doing. And I think some of the decisions that we made at Google, but also we know that this happened to Apple and Amazon, was based on, Google has done that, so let us do it also. Or, Amazon is doing that, so let us do it. And I think that's while it's in a very race competition phase, it feels, necessary. It's hard to think what we could have ignored it. But I would say that if one of these 3 companies was more independently focusing on just improving it for the users, maybe it was more successful to ignore the pressure, the external, comms and PR pressure. So I think but it's not easy, and it's easier to say it, of course, because everyone would ask us, okay, hey, are you worried about, Amazon taking every household in the world and so on? So I think we could not, ignore that.
Yeah. And what about on the either the technical or the user experience side of building it? I would love to hear more about what was hard about getting the experience right.
One of the challenges is really to make it very accessible, because this is about, making things faster and easier. So if you need to unlock the phone and go somewhere and then press on something, that already kills the whole point of quickness. We tried many different approaches to improve that, including when you say, hey, Google, for the follow-up queries, we don't want you to again say that, because now you started a conversation. It's not true that I say Dan in every sentence which I'm talking to you. So let's make it a bit more, natural in that sense. At the same time, the apps on the mobile, for example, have a very big dominant on what people are doing on mobile phones. So a big challenge for us has been, really how to coexist with apps, whether it's a small overlay that can come and help with that particular apps. Should we do it together with the app developers, or should we do it at OS levels? There's all these types of complex decisions with the consequences that we were trying to make in those times. And I think there's also the whole point of, at some point, we really were calling these assistants ultimate assistants. Maybe these days, GenAI, ChatGPT, Gemini, and so on is getting closer to that in that sense. But the ultimate assistant means that ask really anything. At that time, we did not yet have, the full GenAI power that we're seeing today. So it's a hard decision to focus an assistant that you're building on a few things or on a million use cases that this can do. So I think that was a top challenge, because when it does many things, then it's very hard for people to understand that, okay, how should I say it? What types of things works? What types of things doesn't work? And I think that always has been a challenge, I would say.
What is something, whether it's in sports or anywhere, that sounds like science fiction today that you think in 5 or 10 years is actually going to be really, really commonplace?
Yeah, that's a good question. Maybe if you change the 5 to 10 years number to, let's say, 20, then I am 100% sure that we will all have this so-called ultimate assistant. And, again, I played some role in, with Google Assistant and Google Lens in moving in those directions. So that could be in some different form than today. It's not necessarily a mobile phone. It could be just a small pin somewhere, which is basically, seeing and hearing everything that's happening around us. So obviously it's seeing more than what I see, because it might be seeing more angles. It can hear more things, and helping us for everything, remembering everything, or what, at the end of this conversation can you give a summary for us, and everything. Whenever you forget anything, you just ask, this assistant, which is omnipresent with you. So I think that's on the consumer side. But I think in the value side, I'm very optimistic. And I think in the 10 years front, I think on the healthcare side, we're seeing lots of progress in terms of identifying, diseases earlier than what doctors can do without AI, whether it's, early signs of cancer or things of that sort, or creating, drugs for some of these complex diseases, thanks to, some of the efforts like AlphaFold and etc. And I do believe that these things is actually will be the fruits of this. We will see them, really in the range of the next 5 years and so on. So some of the diseases which today don't have a cure will actually be cured in the next 5 to 10 years. I think that's most likely one of the most amazing impact that we could see. And I think it will happen.
Wow. Yeah. Behshad, thank you so much. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you very much, Dan.
That's Behshad Behzadi. I'm Dan Blumberg, and this is Crafted. Crafted is brought to you in partnership with Docker, which helps developers build, share, run, and verify applications anywhere without environment confirmation or management. More than 20 million developers worldwide use Docker's suite of development tools, services, and automations to accelerate the delivery of secure applications. Learn more at docker.com. Special thanks to Artium, where I launched Crafted to see how Artium could help you build your future at artium.ai. And Crafted is produced by Modern Product Minds, where my team and I can help you take a new product from 0 to 1 and beyond. We specialize in early-stage product discovery, growth, and experimentation. Learn more and sign up for the Crafted newsletter at modernproductminds.com. Please share Crafted with a friend and watch the show grow.
We were just 4 people. A month later, we were 20. A year later, we were 1,000 people.